Hey YouTube, what is up? I'm Vinny D from VMDTCG, that's my YouTube channel, and I wanted to thank Screencasters for allowing me to guest upload on his channel, because now that I'm starting my own YouTube channel with Yugioh in mind, he's kind enough to allow me to guest upload on his channel, and believe it or not, he is the reason that I actually started making Yu-Gi-Oh videos in the first place. I saw his Chaos Dragon deck profiles, and I thought it was the coolest thing, and I made my own Chaos Dragon deck profiles and stuff like that, and eventually he found the videos and was kind enough to help me even more. So thank you again, Screencasters. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I won't waste any more of your time, so let's get this deck profile underway. The first card I like to run in my Satellarknight build is one Vega. I don't like to run more than one Vega. I feel like it clogs otherwise. It's good because you could ditch it with a Nukolai, but you don't really need to do more with it than that. One is enough, I believe. I do like to run 3 Nukolai because a Nukolai is super useful, especially if you have a Skybridge in your hand. You can have a Satellarknight, a Nukolai, and a Skybridge. Normal summon the Nukolai, ditch Deneb, Skybridge a Nukolai into Altair. Altair will special summon the Deneb, and you draw from Deneb as well. So an opening hand with those two cards is really, really good. And if you have another Satellarknight in the hand with a Nukolai and the Skybridge, it's even better because you can use a Nukolai to ditch Vega, then Skybridge and Nukolai into Altair. Altair brings out Vega, and then Vega brings out the card from your hand, and you can do something like a 3-card number 86 first turn, which screws your opponent up, or you can do a Travere and pluck a card out of your opponent's hand before they even have a chance to start the game, which is really useful to make your opponent start with 5 cards on the second turn. That kind of does screw a lot of people up, so that's why I like to run it, because it's really useful, and 3 of them matches the number of Skybridges I have. Next, I run 3 Deneb because it's standard, as well as 3 Altair. I really don't feel like I need to explain it. These cards just make the deck run better. It's the Satellarknight engine, and in total, I don't think there's more, explanation necessary than that. I do also like to run 2 Honest because in case I get basically pushed up against a brick wall, if they have Vanities on the field and I have a Satellarknight and I can't do anything, I can't special summon or anything like that, it's good to have an Honest in hand, because if they attack, you can just flip their attack, destroy their monster, and get rid of their Vanities. Honest is also a level 4 light monster, so you can use it to get a lot of cards from your extra deck out as well. So in case you do need to special summon it for some reason, it's really good. I also like to run 2 Max C because Max C is basically an upstart goblin, but puts a little more pressure on your opponent, I feel. Max C forces them to keep in mind that every time they special summon, you're going to draw a card. So if they don't think they can OTK you, they might not go as hard, and it'll force them to weaken what they had planned originally. If you upstart, you're giving your opponent 1,000 life points, which I really don't like. Max C can be summoned in defense position as well, in case of an emergency. I don't really like to do that, but if I'm going to lose the game, it's good to set a Max C and draw the next turn as well. So Max C has more than one use. Upstart Goblin just allows you to play with 37-card deck, which is really good, but in the grander scheme of things, I really do feel that Max C is a little more useful than Upstart Goblins. Next, for one-off trap cards, I like to run 1 Vanities and 1 Solemn Warning. Solemn Warning just, is Solemn Warning. Vanity stops your opponent from special summoning. I don't feel like these cards are all that special that they warrant a complete description. Maybe this card, though. Horn of Heaven, if you haven't seen it, it's a really, really old card, actually. It's, I guess, the original Horn of Heaven. There's now Black Horn, Grand Horn, stuff like that. The reason I run this Horn is because it's a counter trap, and it hasn't been errated, which means it hasn't had its effects changed yet, which is really useful, because if its effects haven't been changed, it is pretty overpowered in my opinion. All you do is when your opponent would summon a monster, it doesn't specify special or normal, so you can use it on either. When they summon a card, you basically flip this, tribute 1 monster on your side of the field. If you tribute something like a Travere, you could bring out even more monsters, and then you just negate the entire summon and destroy the card. So that works against pendulums. It's really useful if you can negate an entire pendulum summon without having to pay anything besides 1 card on the field. I think that's really, really useful. I like to run this instead of Grand Horn because it can be used in the battle phase against something like Cosmos, so it forces them to switch a card, maybe not deal the 3k they would with Dark Destroyer, and instead do something like 2400 or a little lower than that, so you can stop a big attack with it in the battle phase, main phase 1, main phase 2. You can do a lot with it, and that's why I like it. I also like to run 2 Time Space Trap Hole, and these are both the same time space. I don't know why one's discolored. One of these might be fake. I hope I didn't get, sent a fake card. But if I did, oh well. Anyway, Time Space Trap Hole is really useful because though it does specify from hand or extra deck, there's a little bit more of a summoning condition. You can use this against pendulums as well, and because this doesn't target, just like the Horn doesn't target, you can use this against pendulums. Similar, you can use this against Magispectors, and when your opponent summons Magispector monsters, you just shuffle them back into the deck, and because they can't be destroyed, it doesn't, really affect their negations, really, because Magispectors are kind of tough to get rid of, but if you can use a Time Space Trap Hole on them, you stop their abilities because they don't even touch the field, they just go back into the deck, which screws up a lot of XYZ and Pendulum summons, because if Pendulum zones are not filled and they don't have cards in the extra deck as Pendulum summon, it kind of screws them over badly. Next, I like to run 3 Fiendish Chain, just because with Trevere you can reuse continuous traps, pretty much just bounce them back to the hand, and Fiendish Chain is one of them, though it's not too useful against the Cosmo or the Magispector matchup because they can't be targeted and Cosmos just switch out and switch out and switch out. I do like to run 3 because not everybody runs the money decks these days. So it's just in case I play something, maybe the mirror match, it comes in handy. Next, I like to run 1 Oasis of Dragon Souls because it's Call the Haunted but for defense position. You can use this also on something like a Norden if you run Instafusion in your deck. And I also like to run 3 Call the Haunted because it's Call the Haunted. It brings out Altairs, brings out Vegas. It's basically your way to special summon more monsters once your turn's over. You could special summon on your opponent's turn in their end phase and then do it all over again to get 5 cards on the field and do something like a number 86, which is really, really fun and kind of scummy to do. But Call the Haunted, I feel at 3 is a must in a Satellarknight deck. You can run 1 Oasis of Dragon Souls, but you can run 2 as well. I like to run 1 just because otherwise I'd have to take out better cards in my deck. Next, I run 3 Satellar Nova Alphas because it is great. It stops effects, it stops spells, it stops traps, it stops, I guess, some kinds of summons, I guess maybe like ritual summons and stuff like that, monster effects. It's really useful, and you get to draw off of it as well. So if you use Satellar Nova Alpha to get rid of something that your opponent's doing and you burn something like a Trevere or a Deltaros, you can bring out another Satellarknight and draw a card. So it really just does help you go plus with it. Now for my spell cards, I like to run 1 Raigeki because it's Raigeki and it stops everything. It's a little tough against the Magispector matchup. Maybe just take this out and side against it otherwise, but it's really useful. I like to run 1 Instafusion because I only run 1 Norden. I don't like to run 2 because if I already use Instafusion and I don't have another Norden in my extra deck, I have a dead card in my hand and I really don't like that. So I only run 1. It's a little more situational then, but it's still pretty useful. I also run 3 MST to stop that back row because sometimes when you run Satellarknight, people like to run this thing called Light Imprisoning Mirror, and that screws you up really badly, and this gets rid of that. So it is your best friend when they have Light Imprisonings on the field. Next, I like to run 1 Book of Moon, because it's a really good card to use. It stops effects because you just put the monster face down, and it can't use its effect. It's really useful for how simple its effect actually is. And then I run 3 Skybridge and 1 Rhoda. Now, the reason I run 3 Skybridge is because Rhoda got knocked down to 1, so I put the places where I had Rhodas, I just put Skybridges in, and I couldn't be more happy. Skybridges are so useful, and you can just switch out and switch out and switch out. You can use it on your opponent's turn, and you can switch out a Trevere if it gets Fiendish Chained, and you have a Skybridge, you can activate it and just switch the card out. It's really, really useful. It helps recycle materials. You can do a whole lot with a Skybridge, and that's why I like to run 3. Some people don't, but I prefer to. Next, for my extra deck, I like to run 1 Satellarknight Constellar Diamond and 1 Ptolemaeus. When Cyber Dragon Infinity drops, though, I might be taking out the Diamond for a Cyber Dragon Infinity because Ptolemaeus allows you to rank up into it the same way that you rank up with Diamond into Ptolemaeus. So I might get rid of Diamond eventually, but for now, I don't have anything else I think would fill the slot just as well as it does, so I'm deciding to keep it for now. There isn't any really Shadal matchups anymore, so it's not too useful, but it does stop dark effects, so you can use it against something like a Dark Destroyer, because on the special summon, or its effect, you can stop it and negate it and destroy it, which is really useful. I also run 1 Heroic Champion Excalibur. Sorry, it's Ghost Rare, so it's kind of like blending in with the background of my Spellground mat, but I like to run 1 Excalibur because a 4K beat stick is pretty good, and it's only 2 level 4 light monsters, so you can get that pretty easily with a Satellarknight deck. So you can get a 4K beat stick out pretty much like nothing. I also like to run 1 number 86 Heroic Champion Ragnaminiad. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. This card is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not going to read its effects now because it's a goddamn novel, but just look this card up because it is ridiculous. If you can summon this with 5 materials, you basically win the game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You win the game. It's unaffected by traps, spells. You can't summon the next turn. It's ridiculous. It blows up the field. There's nothing that could stop that with 5 materials, in my opinion. Next, I like to run 2 Trevere because it is super useful for recycling your materials, like your Call the Haunted, Oasis of Dragon Souls. If it's face up on the field and you summon a Trevere, it goes back to your hand. Same thing with Fiendish Chains. I also like to Trevere into Trevere because it allows me not only to bounce another Trevere back to my extra deck, but I also bounce the cards that I have underneath it as well. So it's good for recycling materials, and it's good for getting rid of your opponent's cards from their hand before they can even use them. Trevere on the first turn is basically a middle finger to them, and I like that very, very much. Also, when it's destroyed, it summons from the graveyard. so you can bring out basically another Trevere if you have an Altair, a Vega, and then a Satellarknight in your hand. Next, I like to run one Norden. I would run two, I just don't have the room in my extra deck, and then I have to put another Insta-Fusion in my deck, and I don't really want to do that. I run one. You can bring it out with Oasis of Dragon Souls, call the Haunted, or Insta-Fusion, so it's really useful, but you got to Insta-Fusion first before you can call the Haunted it and Oasis of Dragon Souls, because it needs to be in the graveyard, but it allows you to go into rank 4s, so it just helps with that rank 4 toolbox. I like to run Deltaros only at 1. Satellarknight Trevere is a little more situational because it does need to be level 4, you know, Tellarknight monsters. It needs to be 3 of them. Satellarknight Deltaros, on the other hand, though, just needs to be 3 level 4 monsters. So you can bring out Satellarknight Deltaros with 3 level 4 monsters, so you can use the Norden underneath it, you can use the Honest underneath it, and you can pop cards on your opponent's side of the field or your side of the field. You can pop himself, and then you can bring out even more monsters, because when he's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a Satellarknight from your deck, which is really useful. So if he's Fiendish Chained or something like that, you can't do anything, but if he's destroyed by even his own effect, you can special summon, which I think is a really good way to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Because destroying your own monsters, it throws your opponents for a loop for a second, and they might not be sure what you're doing. I also like to run one Silent Honor Arc. It's just part of that rank 4 toolbox. It helps you get out of sticky situations you wouldn't be able to get out of normally, because if it's a special summon monster in attack position, odds are it's probably going to do you some damage. So with this, you can just get rid of it, and it doesn't destroy the monster, so you can take monsters that can't be destroyed by battle with it. It's really useful, and that's why it's probably like 15 to 20 bucks. I run Steel Swarm Roach because I like to play my friend and he plays Infernoids. You can take this out if you have a better extra deck card in mind, but I like to run this against Infernoids. Anytime a monster is summoned that's a level 5 or higher, you remove a material from him, and it stops the summon, which is pretty good, and you can bring it out rather easily. So if you're playing Infernoids and they don't have the cards that allow them to pop themselves to destroy him, he basically stops your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And I like to do that. Next, I run a Karen Gorgon. I can't even read the word. I'm just going to say something Knight. It's too complicated for me to pronounce right now because I'm reading it through a camera. But I run one of him. He's really good, 2400. He helps protect your monsters because anytime an effect that targets exactly one card activates, he can change it and you can choose what the target for it is. So that's pretty ridiculous, especially when you consider like a Fiendish Chain or something that targets exactly one card. You can change who gets affected with him, and that's pretty nuts. Next, I like to run one Bujin Tsukiyomi, and that is because if I have one card in the hand and 2 level 4 monsters on the field, I can ditch that one card in my hand and I can draw 2. So his effect is ditch 1 or 2 cards and draw 2. So you can go plus with him, especially if you don't have a good hand. He's a way to get better cards in an emergency. I wouldn't like to summon him too much, but he does have his uses, and that's why I keep him in. I also like to run one Castel the Skyblaster Musketeer. Skyblaster Musketeer, I think I said that really weird. But I like to run one of these because it's Castel. He gets rid of face-up cards on the field, and that is really useful. He has saved me a lot. I also like to run Gagaga Cowboy because he has also saved me a lot. Gagaga for game is one of my favorite phrases just because you look him in the face, say Gagaga for game, and they go, show me the Gagaga. You pull it out, and that's it. Gagaga is great because you can deal 800 damage directly to them. He allows you to basically attack over any monster as well if the monster has more than... if your opponent has less than 2900 attack, he can attack over it because of his effect, where he gets boosted by 1000 and your opponent loses 500 attack. So he's almost like a Swiss Army knife where he can attack, and when he's in defense, he does direct damage, which is really useful. So that's why I like to run him. And I also run one Daigusto Emerald. I think it's the Shatter Rare version of it. I can't tell because I have the sleeve on it right now. But this just helps you recycle materials late into the game because Satellarknights like to burn through their deck. So if you do have all your stuff you need, all your Satellarknights in your deck, not in your deck, in your graveyard, and you want to put them back in your deck, Daigusto Emerald is the way to go. He's really useful, and that's why I have him. Next up, here are 3 cards I like to run in my deck. I just didn't have room for them, so I took them out. I like to run Soul Charge. I just found it's too situational, where I couldn't attack my opponent, and I had to pay 1000 to special summon each time. So instead of putting Soul Charge in, I put the Oasis of Dragon Souls. I felt that helped me out a little more, because Satellarknights can just bring a lot of cards out. Pot of Dualities are useful. It's just, I didn't like when I drew them, so that's why I took them out of the deck as well, but you can run them. I'm just giving you alternatives to the cards that I play. Next, for my extra deck, these are cards that I don't have in it currently, but I do like to run, and I just wanted to show you them. Thunder King Ryle for obvious reasons, Grand Horn as well, but Grand Horn I just felt it was too situational, so I didn't run it. But you can run it, and I just wanted to offer you guys alternatives to what I'm doing, because my deck profile and my deck's build is not always going to be the end-all be-all. there are going to be other builds, and you can build it to the way you like it. I run 2 Fairy Winds just because I'd like to run up against people that play as much back row as I do, and Fairy Winds is similar to Gagaga, where if you can use this late in the game, your opponent has less life points than you could set 5 back row, because with Satellarknights, that's not too uncommon, one of them being a Fairy Wind, and you can deal a lot of damage to your opponent really quickly, and it just can end games. You can also destroy cards that stop you, something like a Light Imprisoning Mirror, this can get rid of, so it's good in the mirror match, and it's just good to side in the second duel, because they're going to pretty much run Light Imprisoning Mirror against you once they see that you play Satellars. Next, I run 3 Iron Wall, because of the Infernoids and the Cosmo matchups. This just shuts down Infernoids, it shuts down Cosmos. It has won me a lot of games, and I like to keep it 3 because I like to see it as early as possible. I don't really want to draw all 3, but if I could draw 2 of them, it pretty much helps me in case one of them gets MST'd or gets destroyed by an Infernoid effect. I also run 2 Trap Stun just to protect me in the mirror match, because I can activate this on my turn when I'm summoning monsters and stuff like that. They don't have any responses then, or I can activate it on their turn, and when I'm attacking, they can't do anything about it. So Trap Stun's good. I would run Royal Decree, but it just stops me too much. Trap Stun's good because it's only 1 turn. I also run 2 Chaos Trap Holes for the Mirror matchup and the Cosmo matchup, because the Mirror and Cosmo matchups are the toughest in my opinion, because Satellarknight mirror matches go really long. Chaos Trap Holes just stop that completely, gets cards out of the way really early, and all Cosmos is light and dark, so if you can get rid of a Dark Destroyer with this, you lose 2,000 life points as opposed to 3,000, so it's really useful, and that's why I do run it. Retaliating Sea, I'm considering taking out, but if you match up against something like BAs or anything that relies on the graveyard, Retaliating Sea is the way to go to stop that. It's basically like dropping a Dark Law, and that does screw up a lot of decks. So if you could just drop a Retaliating Sea and you just poke for game, poke for game, poke for game, because most likely they're not going to have too many responses if all the cards that go to the graveyard are banished. I also run 2 Flying Sea because it stops the XYZ summons. Your opponent, when they summon a card, you just basically put this on their side of the field so you can't XYZ. That's that. And I run 2 Stygian Dirge because it also stops the XYZs unless they have a rank lower than they were planning to make. And that's it. So thank you again, screencasters, for allowing me to do this guest upload. I really do appreciate it, and I can't thank you enough. And thank you guys for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to go over to VMDTCG on YouTube and click subscribe, because this is where most of my Yu-Gi-Oh videos are going to be from now on, as well as some Power Ranger videos if you're interested in that. And that's it. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.